This is With the First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast. This is episode 82. Rick, who's your favorite number 82 off the top of your head?
I don't know.
John Stallworth.
John Stallworth. Okay.
Or Ozzie Newsome. Both great selections there. I got your back, as always, Rick.
Yeah.
That's Rick Spielman. I'm Ryan Wilson. Today, Mailbag Thursday. You ask the questions, we answer them. It's pretty straightforward there. We'll also continue our 5-star evaluations. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, you know how Rick feels about me every day because he doesn't know what I'm talking about half the time either. But here's the deal. If you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and nominate an FBS or FCS player you want us to evaluate on the show, we'll do it. It's as simple as that. And today we'll hit two more of those players, Minnesota safety Tyler Newman and Pittsburgh cornerback M.J. Devonshire. And if you're watching us on the old YouTubes at NFL on CBS, you can see on the official With the First Pick draft countdown clock. Rick, what we got?
217 days until the 2024 NFL draft, and your handwriting is getting better by the day, or whatever.
I know, right? I look like handwriting isn't even a thing. You don't do penmanship in school. That's how old we are. Like, there's no handwriting. My 12-year-old doesn't know how to write in cursive. Like, he thinks that's a pretty cool thing. That's where we are in the education system here. You and I can write in cursive, but we can't add or subtract. It's a trade-off. All right. By the way, if you missed it, our last episode was the Pop or Drop Tuesday show, players that popped. And this is an every week conversation. Shedeur Sanders popped. Spencer Rattler had a good week. Malik Neighbors went absolutely off, while J.J. McCarthy and Joe Milton were some of the players that dropped. We also ranked our top 5 rookie performances from week 2. Shout out to the Pukas and Bijans of the NFL world. And we looked at how all 3 rookie quarterbacks played as well. You can check out all those episodes in the old podcast feed. And following up with that, next Tuesday will be another Pop and Drop Week 4 edition of college, as well as NFL rookie rankings Week 3 edition. So look out for that. And remember, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to nominate a player, FBS or FCS, please do that, and we will evaluate them on an upcoming show. And hit a thumbs up while you're there. It helps us celebrate this podcast and help more people find out about it. All right, Rick, it is go time. We're going to do a mailbag, but first, we're going to do some of these 5-star ratings. And just so we're clear, not 5-star high school players, Rick. We're going to do...
Yes, I figured that out after the show. So
you wanted more direction, and I know Debo doesn't give you enough direction, so I'm going to help.
It's very abstract.
But speaking of abstract, I was in Stanford, like I said the other day, for the Sunday show in the studio, and Charles Davis was giving his update from the game that he covered. And before we went on air, I said, "Hey, Charles, I just want you to know that Rick talks highly of you because you and he share a love for those crazy Hallmark movies."
Oh,
he goes, yeah. And he confirmed what you said. He goes, "Yeah, we text back and forth the endings, and we know exactly what's going to happen." I was like, "Okay, well, that's one way to spend your time on the road."
Yeah, no, I watched Fixer Up Mysteries last night, which was very intense, but they always solve the problem. And I watched Summer Love, where a guru from a corporate raider from New York actually wanted to buy a ranch from this lady and undercut him, and then they started to fall in love, and he fell in love with the ranch life instead of the New York City life and being a corporate raider. And then right about 15-20 minutes before the show ends, everything falls apart, as it always does. But somehow in the last 3 minutes of the show, everything comes back together again. It's amazing to live in that world.
It's like this podcast.
To go through the adversity that they have to go through, yet everything ends up roses and rainbows. And
how about that?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, I'm glad you had
on those shows. I think they just cut and paste.
I'm glad you had a good evening. And by the way, Debo talked to Debo yesterday. He's a huge Lioness fan as well. So you have that in common. I don't think he's into the Hallmark movies, but he agrees with you at Paramount Plus, Lioness.
Did you finish them, Debo? Did you
finish it? I finished it last night. Fantastic.
All 8 episodes?
Yep. I am awaiting a season 2 and kind of see where they take the story.
Okay, so that's my question, because I take everything literally.
Really?
Yeah. So why didn't they, like, I understand the ending in the Lioness, but I didn't know if it was the end of season 1 or not. How do you know it's the end and then they're going to start season 2?
This is, I don't have a good answer. Like, you just kind of know when they say, like, "Oh, this is the series finale."
Oh, the word that gives it away. There it is. All right, let's go, Rick. Enough of your pop culture refreshing whatever. I'm flabbergasted and flustered. Let's go. All right. We look forward to your next
recommend Summer Love. It was very good.
Summer Love. Check it out, Debo. All right. 5-star ratings on these prospect reviews. We've already knocked out a few. Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. We did JJ McCarthy as part of the Pop or Drop podcast on Tuesday. And we're going to start with Tyler Newman, nominated by our guy, Informed Educator. Tyler Newman, safety out of Minnesota. Great week one against a Nebraska team that has struggled, especially at the quarterback position. But that's not Tyler Newman's fault. Played deep safety, both cover two and single high. Can play some slot. He doesn't offer anything in the return game. And I just mentioned that because sometimes these players, wide receivers, cornerbacks, whatever, do a little in special teams. That's not his calling card. His calling card is playing deep safety. He is a turnover generator, and he had 2 in that week one game, and he has a history of turnovers. Had 3 in 2021, 4 in 2022. He's not a thumper, and it depends what flavor of safety you like. You think he's a thumper?
I think he comes up and racks you pretty good.
Okay, let's go. What do you got on Tyler Newman?
Yeah, no, I watched the week one performance against Nebraska. 2 great interceptions. The one where he laid out on an overthrow, and the other one where he had read the quarterback's eyes and anticipated and jumped in front of that little glance route or seam route. So that shows you his anticipatory skills, his ability to read the quarterback's eyes and get a jump on throws. The last 2 games versus EMU, Eastern Michigan, and North Carolina didn't have as many opportunities to make plays on balls in the air. Really didn't throw it his way. I think he is straight line fast. I think when I watch him, he is a big, thick safety. He's over 6'1". I think he's about, he weighed in at 204 pounds, 205 pounds. But I do think he has some stiffness in his lower body, and that showed up when he tried to square up with a running back from Eastern Michigan. What I mean is that when a running back gets to the second level or in space and he has a 2-way go, which means that the Newman doesn't have an angle on him and he's squared up with a running back, and the running back can either go to his right or left, you can see where the stiffness shows up. But I thought when he comes downhill, he is physical. He'll be a downhill striker. Run his feet through on contact. For a safety, I thought he was very good in that area. So I see this guy. It'll be interesting to see once I get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule. But he should be a Friday draft pick, in my opinion, based off what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I had a middle of the day Friday, so late second, early third, maybe, and that can obviously change just upon early watching. In the fall here. You want to hear my comp, or do you want to go with your Rolodex comp first?
No, I didn't have put a comp on him yet. I don't. It's for me. For when you're evaluating a safety or even a corner, it takes more than 3 games because some games they just don't get opportunities.
They're not doing anything, right?
So you almost have to get a full season pitcher to get the full processing in my head going and the Rolodex going on. Yeah, bam, this guy, he's not Antoine Winfield Jr. I can tell you that.
Antoine Smaller too.
But he is
more dynamic, I feel like, as well.
Well, he's showing that in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's ready to get paid pretty big contract. That should have been a better scout when he was running around with my kids in Little League football. No one was able to catch him. So
was he undersized then at that age?
Yeah. Him and my son JD were. It was funny. It was the only 6th grade game I've ever went to where they drew about 200 to 150 people to watch these two go at
really?
each other. Yeah, it was pretty fun to watch. And they were on the same freshman team. They rotated in at running back. They rotated in as punt and kickoff returners. JD played corner. He played safety. And I think that the closest game that they had as true freshmen on the freshman team was 38-0.
So that high school was so good that they weren't even playing varsity freshman year.
No, they got elevated for the playoffs and then saw a little bit of action as freshmen for the playoff team.
Man, I had no idea Minnesota football was that legit.
Eden Prairie, Minnesota football is that.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, and
how far is that from Vikings headquarters?
Well, we were in Eden Prairie, So all the back in the day,
10 feet.
all the players' sons or the coaches' sons all played for Eden Prairie High School. And just a little known fact is that Mike Grant has won more state championships than anyone in Minnesota high school history. And he is the son of Bud Grant.
That's amazing. I don't know if you know the answer to this. I'm just curious for historical reasons. Is he from Minnesota, Bud, or he just came there when he started coaching the Vikings?
Yeah, I don't know what his hometown was. I don't think it was.
Yeah.
Because I know he was, was up in the Canadian League. And
okay.
But he was a phenomenal dual sport athlete for the University of Minnesota, if I recall.
Oh, okay. Man.
This Wisconsin.
He's from Wisconsin, not far.
Right.
All right. So here's my comp. And I think I agree with you about trying to figure out who these safeties are. I do it in part to help me remember the moment, and also because I know they're going to ask me in the spring for comps for all these guys. And at some point, hopefully people just get tired of reading it and they won't care which comp I come up with by the time they read through.
Anymore.
You were happy with my comps last Tuesday when I was exhausted.
Yeah, I know. We're early in the season, so we got a ways to go yet.
So here's my comp, and I don't know. It is just it's two words put together to make a name. We'll see whether it's 6 or not. Jesse Bates.
Oh my God, no.
Oh, there
He's
you go.
Not nearly as athletic as Jesse Bates. He's not as smooth.
Oh, Newman isn't as athletic as Bates. You don't think?
No.
Okay. Bates was a day 2 guy.
Bates was coming out when he came out of Wake Forest. He had unique ball skills, and he was a smooth athlete. This guy is a little stiff compared to a Jesse Bates, but nice try.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. To be clear for Rick, Newman, a 4-star recruit by 24/7 Sports coming out of high school. Don't want any confusion, not a 5-star.
Okay.
Make a note, Rick. Thank you for that update, Debo.
Direction. Just tell me what to do and be precise.
And the next guy we're going to talk about, a 3-star.
But he's on a 5-star review.
He's on the 5-star review. We get the 5-star.
Sorry for the confusion. That's my bad. I take full ownership.
And Rick, Debo's not being sarcastic, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. Debo would never be sarcastic as our leader on this podcast.
So thanks, Informed Educator, for that nominee, Tyler Newman. Day 2 guy all day long. Maybe that improves. We'll see.
No.
Next up. You don't think so?
No. If I don't think safeties go in the first round.
All right. I was just trying to give.
Went last year, right?
I don't think so. No.
Look at history. Yeah, unless it's something unique. He's not unique enough to be a first-round talent, but he is.
Right. Well, I was just trying to give Informed Educator some hope. He nominated Tyler. Maybe he's related to Tyler, and he was just curious, and we're trying to make him feel good. It's only September, Rick. Jeez.
I'm just telling you, I'm just trying to be real.
All right. Next up, QB coach Blair. His nominee is MJ Devonshire out of Pitt. And he transferred from Kentucky. He plays cornerback, mostly outside. He does play a little bit, and I saw him play a slot, a few snaps, primarily outside, which is interesting because he's undersized, 5'10" and about 179. He does have return skills. He's been a punt returner throughout his college career, both at Kentucky and Pitt. And my initial takeaway is that he is incredibly physical for his size. He will try to get involved in the run game and run support. He's physical with receivers at the top of the route to the point that it will probably get called to the next level. And I think part of that is because he is undersized. Now, he seems a little stiff coming out of breaks, and I'm a little concerned about his deep speed, but the physicality is what stuck out to me.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you somewhat.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I think he has good enough size, even though he looks lean. And why I say that is because he plays with that aggressive mentality. For a leaner guy, he'll come up and try to, as we say, throw his bag of bones into the pile and try to make his presence known. I do think he has good speed. Not good speed. I wouldn't put him in the elite category. When I watched him in coverage, they play a lot of press coverage at Pitt on the tapes that I watched. And I watched the Wolford game, Cincinnati and West Virginia this past weekend. And when he lines up, he has enough foot quickness to mirror that receiver when the receiver is releasing up the field. What he needs to do a better job of, and something that I learned with all the coaches I've been with in the NFL, is jam that receiver or use your hands to disrupt the timing of the route. So I saw he's smooth with his hip turn. I think he can stay, at least with the players that he's played against so far, was able to stay on top of the receivers when he was extended downfield. This guy is as grabby as it gets.
But you've said in the past that that's fixable.
Yeah, but he had 2 DPIs that I charted. He probably could have had 10 more because he grabs the receivers out of breaks or grabs the receivers.
Right.
He needs to turn his head around and look for the ball in the air, especially on those deep balls. He's playing the receiver instead of the ball, and he is a little sticky in his transition, which means when he's trying to redirect and come back to the receiver, when he reacts, it's all technical stuff. I think because I saw the foot quickness when he's mirroring at the line of scrimmage, I think all that can be corrected, his footwork with a technique that NFL coaches will teach him and college coaches will teach him. He just has to be more disciplined when he drops his weight, plants his foot, and not look, and by sticky, I mean hesitant coming out or trying to gather his feet coming out to react to routes back inside. But I loved his physicality as a player. I see this guy right now as probably a late to maybe middle day 3 guy somewhere in Saturday, 5 through 7, just what I've seen so far.
So let me circle back to something you said, because I said at the top that I thought he was a little stiff on coming out of his breaks on comebacks. You think that's more technical and less physical?
Yeah, because he does play with some knee bend.
Mm-hmm.
What he does is when he gets worked up the field, he all of a sudden gets tall, but he can drop his weight. So technically, yeah, I've seen him drop his weight, but when he gets stressed and get worked up the field, he doesn't drop his weight. So all that stuff I think is correctable with coaching, because I don't think he's stiff in the hips. I just think he has poor technique.
Okay.
Transition.
Well, that's an important distinction, right? Because if you're stiff, you're stiff. But if it's just something you can fix with a coaching point, that's the game changer. Either way, I agree. I think day 3 somewhere.
Did I teach you something?
Yeah, you absolutely did. Thank you.
So
now I'm going to teach you something. Listen to this.
Your comp?
Not yet. No, I don't even want to say that out loud. So I watched the Cincinnati game as well, but I went back and watched the Tennessee game from last year because of all the dudes on that team. Jalen Hyatt, Hendon Hooker, Brew McCoy. I don't know if Seth Tillman played in that game or not. He had been injured for part of the season. But I'll tell you this much. He played outside most of that game too. But he ran with Jalen Hyatt on a go ball and was right in his hip pocket and had a PBU, got his head back and wasn't physical at all in terms of grabby. And that got my attention. That was early in the first half. And then later in the first half, right towards the end of the first half, they went after him 3 straight times on deep balls, and they beat him 3 times. I think one was an overthrow, one was a DPI, and the other one may have been a touchdown or down at the 1-yard line. So they knew that they could get him on those deep throws, and that's why I had some concerns about his deep speed. But Jalen Hyatt's taller than he is. Brew McCoy is a couple inches taller than he is, and he's not quite he might be the same weight as Jalen because Jalen's not that heavy. But Brew's a thicker wide receiver. But I gave him credit for coming back and being physical, and you talk about it all the time. You got to have a short-term memory, and it seems that he has that, and he plays with an edge. So I like a lot about what he brings to the field.
He has a lot of swag to him, what you need for the corner. I always called it swag. And some of those guys that you don't know if they're going to win in a foot race, the way they win on those deep, especially if they're in press, is if they disrupt the release, and which throws the timing off. And when he turns, just stay on top of the receiver, which means you're on top, you're not behind the receiver. And he has enough ability to stay on top of the receiver. It's just he has to learn how to calm down and not panic when the ball's in the air and start grabbing.
Right.
I think he can be in position. And guys that may be not as fast, if you can get your hands on a receiver early in the down and then stay on top of that receiver as you get extended down the field, that gives them a better chance to have success.
Yep, absolutely. And I think he had an interception in that Tennessee game as well, but he just got his foot out of bounds. I have to go back. Yeah, he did. Absolutely.
Now I'm going through the Rolodex a little bit, who he may remind me of.
Who you got?
The corner up in Buffalo that came out of Pitt a few years ago.
Dane Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't love Dane coming out, but he's certainly done well for himself.
Yeah. Well, I just know because we tried to get him off Buffalo's practice squad twice.
And he said no both times?
Well, no, we couldn't get him off because they kept bringing him up.
Gotcha. Okay. Because he can say no even if you offer a 53-man spot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you didn't get that opportunity.
Yep. So,
all right.
But he reminds me of Dane Jackson because I had some issues with Dane Jackson coming out as well from Pitt.
Okay.
But he got better when he got to the NFL.
All right, I'll tell you my comp, and this is strictly not position-wise because this guy plays the slot, but just in terms of the grabbiness, because I couldn't get over it. TCU's Travius Hodges Tomlinson, remember him last year?
Yeah, the short guy.
Short guy. And this guy is 5'10", but to your point, he plays a little bit bigger than that, but he was so grabby. That's like, good Lord, this guy has to quit grabbing people. All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hit these mailbag questions right after this.
Saturday, doubleheader action on CBS. Ole Miss takes on the Tide in Alabama. Then a primetime whiteout as Iowa faces Penn State. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
All right, Rick, Sunday, it's week 3, and the NFL on CBS features the next chapter in the AFC East rivalry between the Patriots and the Jets, or the Broncos taking on the Dolphins. Get set for kickoff beginning at noon Eastern with JB and the guys on the NFL Today. All hail Sunday. The NFL is on CBS, streaming on Paramount+, where Rick also enjoys the Linus. All right, Rick, mailbag time. We'll start with some questions from YouTube. At Will D16 asks, is there a real chance Caleb Williams doesn't declare for the draft this year? We've talked about that a few weeks ago on the podcast. That feels like crazy talk, and you've talked about the NIL money is great, but it ain't first overall pick money. And it doesn't look like the Cardinals are tanking, even though they haven't won a football game, but they're playing pretty well for an upstart outfit. What's your take on Caleb Williams? Specifically, if you're a general manager that might have the opportunity to draft him.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, and I looked, I believe that Bryce Young got his total contract was $39 million for the 4 years, and they always have that 5th-year option. So that's fully guaranteed money. And Caleb has to consider a couple things. If he does come back to school, the NIL money, I understand, but he may be in a worse situation than, for example, if Arizona ends up having the 1st-round pick. Well, let's say just out of Houston has a 1st-round pick. Well, they're not going to take a quarterback. So,
and I think their 1st-round pick goes to Arizona, though. That's the Will Anderson.
That's the Will Anderson one. So, but let's say Chicago has a 1st-round pick.
You're taking them, but I don't wish for people to get fired, but you would imagine there'd be some changes up and down the organization the way things are currently going.
Well, they didn't draft Justin.
And they didn't draft Justin Fields. So look, I'm going to tell you what we're only 2 games in, but the draft order currently looks like based on all the metrics, the win percentage, the opponent you face, the points scored and for and against. Right now, the Broncos have the 1st overall pick. You can pass on talking about the Broncos if you want to, but if you want to comment.
No, why would you pass on? Who you want to play for? You can't pick who you want to play for. It's actually the opposite of the draft concept is the teams pick you. You don't get to pick the teams.
So I'll ask you, is General Manager George Payton taking the quarterback if this order remains the same where Denver has the 1st overall pick?
Oh, boy. That's going if Denver has a 1st overall pick and it's Caleb Williams, I don't know how you can pass on him.
And Sean Payton likes really good quarterbacks, as do most coaches.
Yeah. If he's a generational quarterback, you cannot pass on taking a Caleb Williams.
And the same holds for the Bears at number 2 if the draft order currently holds, of course. The Chargers aren't doing it. They would trade down or, if the season ended today, this isn't how it's going to end. What about the Vikings at 4?
Oh, yeah. And we'll talk about that.
Okay, yeah, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll keep going down the Bengals. We'll just do the top 10 quick just to get your response. The 7, what about the Patriots? Mac Jones has played well this season, but he ain't Caleb Williams.
Nope.
So you're taking Caleb Williams?
Yes.
The Cardinals, of course, and then Chicago has another. Good Lord, they have 2 1st-round picks in the top 10 currently.
I think Ryan, read off just more teams and see where Rick is kind of stopping at taking Caleb Williams.
Okay, the Bears at 9, yes. Vegas, yes, because of Jimmy G, right?
Yes.
Unless you love Aiden O'Connell as much as I do. Houston?
No.
Okay. Detroit?
Yes.
Oh, they just took Hendon Hooker, too. Indianapolis, no. Jacksonville, no, I would imagine. Seattle?
Yes.
Rams, yes, of course.
Yes.
And the Giants, yes. Tampa Bay, yes. I'm just answering for you. What about Green Bay?
If Green Bay had an opportunity to take Caleb Williams, although Jordan Love has played pretty good.
He's played pretty good.
I would say let's see how the rest of the season plays out. But when you get down into this area here, I don't know except for Kansas City, Philadelphia, Buffalo.
That's about it.
Caleb Williams, yeah.
Well, I'll ask you one more name. The Steelers.
Yes, I would take Caleb Williams.
Kenny Pickett has not looked good, but whatever. All right.
Kenny Pickett, or is it the offensive coordinator, your guy, Matt Canada?
Or is it the combination of the two that's really gone sideways in a hurry? It hasn't been fun to watch for sure. Thank goodness for TJ Watt and that defense. All right. Thanks, Will D16.
And the other thing, too, why he would come back, that gives him 1 year closer to getting that type of contract that these guys are getting right now. And the plus, 230, 240, 250 range and all that guaranteed money. What do you think it's going to be when he becomes a free agent and let's say he becomes a generational type quarterback?
It's going to be $75 million by that point per year.
Yeah.
So more likely to return to school, Caleb Williams or Shedeur Sanders?
Shedeur Sanders for sure.
I think so too. Yeah, I think Caleb comes out.
Because of his dad.
Yeah. All right. Next up, at the Sports Fellowship asks, who is wide receiver 2 after Marvin Harrison Jr.? And where do you see Will Shipley going? Is he the next Christian McCaffrey? And we talked about Will. We'll start with Will Shipley first. We talked about him in the summer scouting, and I think we both agreed that he's not Christian McCaffrey.
No.
He's a dynamic running back who's a little undersized and doesn't have the contact balance of a Christian McCaffrey, for example. And he's a big part of that offense, but I think we pegged him as a day 3 guy right now.
Yeah, I would see him 4th round right now. If he runs fast, maybe into the 3rd to try to get into the mix with some of these other running backs coming out. And the only reason I say he would get into the mix, he's not going to be a bell cow where you're going to give the ball 15, 20, 25 times a game. He's not the athlete that Jahmyr Gibbs was coming out or Bijan Robinson, 2 different categories. He's a very good football player. He can do multiple things for an offense. He can catch the ball. He can run. I see him more of a role type player in the NFL than a true lead dog.
I said he's at his best just from the summer. I haven't gone back and watched him other than TV this fall. At his best on the perimeter. He's as tough as they come. He welcomes contact, but he struggles in pass protection as a blocker, which isn't uncommon for running backs of any size coming out of college. And if you look here, Debo had the stats up. He had a big game against Duke. I think my comp for him, we'll say he'll like this. Rex Burkhead came to mind as you were talking, but I had originally Gio Bernard. How do you feel like Gio Bernard as a comp?
Absolutely not.
The definitiveness of the disapproval. Why not Gio Bernard? Gio Bernard's a better athlete?
Yeah, and Gio Bernard's a better, more physical. His kid's physical. Gio Bernard was a good role player. So, but I don't see the two in the same category.
Absolutely not. Does the Rolodex have a name or not yet?
No, I can't remember I did have a name. I can't remember way back when we did them in the summer who my comp was.
I hope it's Gio Bernard when I look it up. All right. The other part of that question, of course, who's wide receiver 2 after Marvin?
Boy, I think it's going to be a race. Like who's the 3rd quarterback in this draft?
Yeah.
Egbuka.
You love Egbuka, yeah.
Yeah, as number 2. But, what we talked about on Tuesday, Napers from LSU
big day.
Make a strong push. I don't think the 2 Washington receivers are up there yet, and I don't see Worthy at Texas up there yet. The Florida State kid
Keon Coleman.
But right now I would say it would be between Neighbors at LSU and Egbuka at Ohio State.
Yeah, I have Neighbors and Egbuka both in the 1st round range, like lower half the 1st round. I have a Neighbors slightly ahead of them, but again, it's early in the process. Xavier Worthy I have going on day 2, along with Keon Coleman and Odunze, the Washington wide receiver. I need to go back and watch number 11, the other Washington wide receiver, McClellan, I think his name is. Let me double check, but he feels a little bit more dynamic. We've seen him flash, Jalen McMillan, excuse me. We've seen him flash every single time Michael Penix is thrown for 4,000 yards, which happens every week, it feels like. But I think right now it's a race between Neighbors and Ibuka. And, Keon Coleman had a great start to the season. We'll see if he can sustain that and if anyone else comes out of the pack to differentiate themselves.
Rick's comp for Shipley was Jerick McKinnon.
Oh, that guy's a good athlete.
Yeah. Shipley's a good athlete. I'm not saying he's not a good athlete.
Okay.
But Jerick McKinnon was because we drafted him. He was
That's right. You cheated. You just used all the comps of the players that you had done extensive research on. I forgot about that.
But what Jerick McKinnon does for the Kansas City Chiefs, he can run the ball. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He does a lot of utility work for that offense. Hopefully the Kansas City offense gets rolling here pretty soon because they haven't been real impressive the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, you don't say that very often. Jerick was a day 3 guy as well, right?
I think we drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round, right at that borderline area.
All right, so that's right around where we think Shipley might end up going to. All right. Kylene Strom 9809 asks, all right, Rick, it's time for Minnesota. Is it time for Minnesota to finally move up and take a quarterback? So we hinted at this earlier. What do you think?
Yeah, they have to.
They have to.
They Kirk Cousins is out of contract. He's 38 years old. I think he's been playing pretty well.
He hasn't been the problem. A lot of times fans like to point the finger at Kurt, not this year.
And the connection that him and Justin Jefferson have is incredible. I don't know any of the two. The knock on Kirk is he did it. He's a pocket passer. He needs, he's had, I think 2 or 3 fumbles when he gets hit in the backfield. He needs to secure the ball a little bit better, but some of that isn't his fault when you're getting whacked in the back and don't know the guy's coming. But his production, and he's still showing he can play, but they don't have a quarterback next year. So they have no choice if Kirk Cousins is moving on to go up and be aggressive to get one of these quarterbacks.
By the way, Kirk Cousins' agent just called me. He's not 38. He just turned 35.
Oh, he's 35? Why
Yeah.
did he was 38?
Debo's 38. Debo's not 38. Debo's younger than Kirk Cousins.
Rick signed him, and he thought he was 34 at the time.
Hey, let me ask you this. It's a Kirk Cousins question. How much pushback did you get, not necessarily from fans, but from other GMs around the league when you gave Kurt that 3-year guaranteed? I think it was 85.
Yeah,
that was the first. Was that the first time that's been
first time? But it was a different circumstance because we weren't the only team willing to fully guarantee that contract.
Oh, how did you know that? His agent told you, or that was out there in the news?
You have get word through the grapevine.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but it's because of Kirk Cousins being a pretty talented quarterback that was franchised twice. So both of those times were guaranteed, and he hit the open market. So when a quarterback at that level hits the open market, he can demand what he wants, and teams are willing to pay for it.
So there were no GMs that said, "Hey, man, what are you doing? You ruining it for the rest of us," because they understood that there was more than one offer on the table.
I don't know how happy everybody was with it, but again, if we weren't going to do it, I knew for a fact that 3 other teams had the same guarantees on the table.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So quickly, Nick Mullen is currently on the roster. Nick Mullins is the backup formerly of San Francisco, and then Jaron Hall, who they drafted at BYU, who we saw at the Senior Bowl. I thought he played okay last fall. He struggled a little bit in the pre-draft process. I'm not sure if he was injured or not. We didn't watch him, or at least I didn't over preseason, so I'm not sure how he looked there. But your larger point is that they're going to need a quarterback, because if Kurt does not return, they have some questions they need to answer. And currently they have a top 5 pick. That'll change, of course. But if Caleb is there and you're on the board, you're taking him. And if Caleb's gone and you have an opportunity to take Drake May, I'm guessing you're taking him too.
Yes.
Yep. All right. So this is the year it all comes together. And I don't think there are any quarterbacks worth trading for, especially a top 15 pick. There's some that were. You trade for Josh Allen, of course, but you got to get him for. They're not going to move on from him. But I'm just trying to think. Like, we've seen quarterbacks get traded. Like Deshaun Watson was obviously a big one that hasn't worked out. Russ was a big one that hasn't worked out yet. So, would you feel better with a guy in his early 30s, veteran who's played well, or just roll the dice on Drake?
If they're trying to just go and say, "Hey, we need to get our young franchise quarterback," then they have to go to the draft.
Gotcha. All right. User, bunch of letters and numbers, asks, if Brock Bowers enters the NFL draft this year, where do you think he'll land as a tight end? Well, we talked about him on Tuesday in Popper Draft because he's a much better blocker this year than he was last year. And athletically, he's already tight end 1 because of all the things he can do down the field in terms of catch radius, speed, getting open. Does a team pop into your mind as a good fit? I mean, every team I would imagine does, but in terms of what he does well and they would use him to his maximum capacity?
Yeah, that's pretty early in the process. I think he's a top 15 pick for sure, but it's still pretty early in the process before you start dissecting teams' needs and potentially cuts that they're going to make. Who's coming up at that position for those teams, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent. So, as you prepare for free agency and you prepare for the draft, you really do a lot of homework on each team, trying to get those questions answered so you can have a better picture of where potentially these guys are going to fall in the draft or what team is going to come get him or draft him. So that will come to be a more clearer picture as we get through closer towards the end of the season and what teams definitely need tight ends.
Yeah, I was looking down the list currently. Jacksonville just re-upped Evan Ingram in the offseason. Right. He had a great run there. If he were still in that 1-year deal, that's obviously a possibility. Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, they don't have any. The guys that like Gesicki, what he signed, a 1-year deal in New England, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
What
about this? What about Kansas City?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, Kelsey is getting a little up there in her tooth, but those two may be better than the receivers they're playing right now.
They would 100% be better than the receivers. So that would be fun. All right. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll hit the second half of these mailbag questions right after this.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
All right, Rick, back at it. Captain Spartane04 asks, it's early, but this is looking like a deep QB class. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Riley Leonard, J.J. McCarthy, and even Jordan Travis. Man, that's a lot. If you're the Jets for the draft, would you get a QB in the first round with Aaron Rodgers being 40 and Zach going to his last year? Or would you go all in and take an offensive lineman? Because the offensive linemen have been an issue. The offensive line class, as we said over the summer, feels like it's going to be better at the top than last year's version. I mean, you start with quarterback, but if Drake May and Caleb Williams are gone and Fashanu or Joe Alt or Mims is sitting there, what are you doing?
Ooh, well, you have no choice, in my opinion. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to be 38. No.
He's the same age as Kirk Cousins.
I'm 38. And coming off an Achilles. And if he does play one more year, then if you draft one of these guys that isn't named Caleb Williams or Drake May, you have a year for that quarterback to sit and learn. But this Zach Wilson, this experiment does not look very good right now. And, he's played some two very, very good defenses. And last week it was an arse whipping. When you watch that Dallas game, he had no chance, but he doesn't have a chance with those tackles that they're playing with either right now. So I think you have to go quarterback if you can get one of these guys, whether any of these other names that you fall in love with or do all the research on and say, yeah, this is our guy going forward. Because I still think that you can potentially trade for a tackle. You can go sign a tackle in the UFA market if there is. We saw Juan Taylor go from Jacksonville to Kansas City. We saw, Tampa cut Donovan Smith. Not that he's any great shakes, but he went, to Kansas City playing on the left side. You saw the right tackle for Kansas City last year that ended up hitting the free agent market and also got signed. So that position, although it's a difficult position, there are more options there. Where if you truly believe that one of these other quarterbacks besides Caleb Williams and Drake May, you have to go with that quarterback because you don't have any other choice.
I get it. What's that?
Do you agree with that theory?
No, I do. I was going to say it's just Aaron Rodgers would probably disagree because he only played 4 plays, or Zach Wilson probably would disagree, but you have to plan for the most important position.
I'm from Zach Wilson. Then.
Right.
He's not.
I get it. I think that's right. You're more likely to get that franchise quarterback through the draft than whatever's going to cost you in the trade. And the Jets already just gave up a ton to get Aaron Rodgers. And to your point, you can find offensive tackle help around the league.
Right. And the other thing, too, is whatever cap situation they're going to be in next year, having a young quarterback. And if Aaron Rodgers does play again next year, but those rookie quarterbacks give the teams a lot of flexibility to manipulate other positions and pay other positions while they're under that rookie contract.
Yep. I said that all the time about the Russ Wilson coming out, and he was a 3rd-round pick, so it was even better. And that's how they're able to build up the Legion of Doom and all.
I never heard you say that.
Oh, yeah, I must say it. I tell my cat that. I don't have a cat. Are you crazy? All right. Let's just get
all the time. Well, who do you say it to? I haven't never heard it.
let's just get a
Dabo
DiBerardinis. He called you Dabo.
Did he ever say that to you? I haven't never heard that.
Yeah, he texts me that daily, like it's like a morning text.
Good morning, Dabo. By the way, that Russ Wilson rookie deal was really smart on the Seahawks part. Hey, before we move on, Rick, let's get a just a random Thursday update. Who's your QB3? Has it changed since Tuesday?
No, I'm still going with Sanders right now. As
okay.
Tuesday. I was hoping JJ, but boy, did he play disappointing. I mean, that was very bad performance against the Bowling Green team. No, right now I'm still going to have to go with Sanders. I'm anxious to see if Quinn Ewers can close the gap.
Yeah.
Drake May, I watched that Minnesota game when I was watching Newman, and he threw a couple poor interceptions in that game.
I'm telling you, there's going to be a gap close between 2 and 3.
That gap between 2 and 3 may be closing early in the season.
Because I say it. We said it a lot last year about Will Levis. You got to squint to see the good stuff. You don't have to squint to see the good stuff with Sanders. And Drake May is not playing. And I was texting a scout about this. He said part of it is the new offensive coordinator and the getting accustomed to the new playmakers around him. Tez Watkins, the wide receiver, has not been deemed eligible to play by the NCAA, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But you got to play with the guys that are out there.
Yeah, and it's not, and I understand that. I do, and that goes into consideration. But the one throw, he was getting hit and just threw the ball up. Just live for another down or throw the ball out of bounds.
Yeah, and that's what you said about Spencer Rattler. Now, Spencer Rattler isn't in the top 5 conversation, but there's some things to like about Spencer. But at the end of the game against Georgia, you didn't like the lack of ball security.
And just understand the game management situation. You still
learn the game is what you're saying.
That's Pete.
All right. Thanks for the question there, Captain Spartano 4. Now on to Al Bundy. I keep hearing people say teams draft based on best available talent. Is this true, or do they draft based on position of need? Is it a blend of need and talent? Do all teams vary in regards to this concept of how they select their draftees? And Rick, we talked about this in the spring. You stack your board and you just go off your board. Now, is there some wiggle room?
Board, but you remember how we talked about the vertical board versus the horizontal board?
Yep.
So you put these most teams use a horizontal board, not the vertical board you see Ryan Wilson do or Josh Evans do or the NFL draft experts we have on this show here. You don't draft off a vertical board. You draft off a horizontal board. And what I mean by that, as you grade those players, you are putting them in a category on your horizontal board. And when you go and look at the horizontal board, you can see that an offensive tackle, let's say a defensive back, a corner, a safety, a linebacker, and a running back, for example, those 5 positions are graded equally on the horizontal board. And in that category of, yes, this guy can come in and start day 1 for us. Then you work within that category, picking the need for your team. Now, if you need an offensive tackle and he is a category or two below, you don't go down and reach for that player. You stay up in that box because there is always a need that you can fill most of the time when you develop those boxes the way I just explained it.
I'm going to show you my my vertical board. Here's how I make my vertical board horizontal. Done. See how simple that was? It's not that hard, Rick.
Oh my God. That's we got so much work to do.
That was the best dad joke we've ever had on the podcast.
Have you ever, in your history as an evaluator, not followed that philosophy and drafted someone that in your gut you thought would be better than where you had him graded based on where you were picking?
No, because
never,
because you have to stay disciplined to your board.
Okay.
You don't all of a sudden go like, haywire on draft night. And that's all predetermined, pre-discussed, rehearsed 150,000 times. And then when draft day comes, there's no discussion. This is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And you can have those disagreements. You can move guys around. You can do this, that, all the way up. But once that clock's on the in 217 days from now starts, you have your game plan in place and you just go.
So all the arguments about the players have taken place in the days and weeks prior on draft night. Are there some disagreements about the horizontal board?
Disagreements? No, it's done. Because in that horizontal board, once you get your horizontal board set, then you have group studies. So we're watching this offensive tackle, then we're going to watch the running back, and then we're going to watch the corner, then we're going to watch the defensive end. And we're going to compare them. We all have them in the same category as graded guy to come in and make it a day one starter. And then we're going to we actually put a fourth number on him on how we would take him for our team. So if I thought the offensive tackle was just as good after we did the group study as the defensive end, then we would put him 1, the defensive end 2. You stack them vertically within that horizontal category going across your board, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. And we'll be doing more stacking as we get into the spring. I look forward to that. That's when Rick really gets fired up. All right, Rick, that's it. If we didn't hit your question, we'll hit it on an upcoming mailbag, so don't worry about that. Keep the old...
And Debo just got my juices flowing with the dad joke thing.
He's looking. He pulled up that binder, Debo, and I thought he was going to talk about the boards. He's looking up dad jokes. Let me read the outro, and then you can do a quick.
This is I write these dad jokes down.
He writes the dad jokes down. All right, I'll read the outro, and then you find a dad joke, and we'll go out on that. All right. If you like what we do here, give us a quick sec to give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you love what we do here and love dad jokes, take it a step further and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And remember, Rick, if you leave a 5-star review in Apple with a prospect's name, we'll evaluate that player in an upcoming show. All right, dad joke time. What do you got, Rick?
Yeah, well, I went to the dentist this week.
Uh-huh.
I did. Okay, so he sharpened the fangs and made them all nice, white and pearly. But when I went in there, he was looking at them and he says, do you smoke or drink coffee? And I looked at him. I says, well, of course I drink coffee.
Rate it, Debo.
I drink it.
There was some promise there. I think Rick's a little rusty with the delivery.
All right. Well, let me get one more.
God.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I should have just said amazing.
Yeah, I know. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't get the chance to rehearse these. I just had written these
You
down.
100% do these in the mirror every day. You've rehearsed them. Go ahead.
So I went to buy a couch
Uh-huh.
the other day, and I went and talked to the salesman, and he said to me, you can fit 5 people with no problem. And I says, I don't know 5 people without any problems.
That was a little better. I'll give you a little better one for that. That's the Jesse Bates comp of dad jokes.
Yeah.
What do you think, Debo? That was a little better?
That was a lot better.
Okay.
It was really good.
I can't believe he hit it. I thought he was going to.
Debo, do you want me to keep going, or are we ending the podcast now?
It's a good one. We were about to get out in under 50 minutes.
Oh, let's do that then. I'll just say quickly. You hit that binder. I thought you were going to drop some football knowledge. That's your dad joke binder. Unbelievable. All right, that's it, Rick. That's a wrap on episode 82.
Here and in my arse.
Jeez, pizza. That's a way to end it. Thanks as always to my guy Rick and his dad joke book. Thanks to Debo for producing. Thanks to all you guys who watched, listen, and comment. We'll see you guys next week for Papa Drop Tuesday. Enjoy your football. Have a good weekend.